We talked a bit about the offense yesterday, Thursday, and I'm becoming more optimistic about that. But what if the defense is actually even better than what we anticipate? Well, that's exactly what one Michigan player is saying. We're going to hear from him, and then we're going to go through and I'll explain what could make this defense actually better than people anticipate. But also, are we falling for fall camp hype yet again? It's a possibility. We'll talk about that on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We're back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We actually are doing our 7th episode this week, if my numbers are right. When was the last time we've had 7 in 1 week? Insane. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. It's been a busy week for us over here. We have gone to Ann Arbor, I think 4 days this week for press conferences. And we actually had another interesting one today, particularly with some of the things that reserve edge rusher TJ Guy, what he had to say about the state of the defense. First, he was asked about Wink Martindale and what he brings to the table. But then after that, he also had some extremely interesting things, I thought, to say about how good this defense might be. And remember, just to set the stage a little bit, he has not said this. Jim Harbaugh used to often say, going back to, I think, 2022, maybe even 2021, like, scary good. They could be scary good. Well, TJ Guy's looking at this defense and saying, yeah, scary good might be exactly what this is, but even more so. How good was Michigan's defense last year? Well, number 1 in the country in total defense and in scoring defense. They were top 10 in pass defense, rush defense, and yards per play. Memory serves, they're closer to top 5 than top 10, but not all are in the top 5 there. They were absolutely phenomenal. Yet, a lot of people think they're going to take a step back, much like we always hear any given year that Michigan loses players. Like, you're not going to replace that guy. Going back, Jabril Peppers, they're not going to replace that guy. Khaleke Hudson ends up being very good. Then you have then you have the Aiden Hutchinson and all these others. They find ways to kind of coalesce, especially when they lose a lot of big talent. Everyone assumed that 2021 defense was only good because you had Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo. Turns out it was good for more reasons than that. Anyway, let's hear from TJ Guy, what he has to say about it right now.
Bro, he's seen a lot. He said to us the other day, he was like, how many huddles do you think I've seen break before, like, since his career coaching? Like, bro, it's probably like 400-something huddles he's seen break. So he knows one thing he brings is knowledge, and I'm just saying, like, this defense is going to be scary, like, for real. Like, nobody's going to know where it's coming from. Nobody's going to know what we're doing. It's going to be so fun. Everybody's going to have a turn to eat. Everybody's going to have stats. It's going to be fun, so fun. We were scary last year, right? I'm telling you, it's going to get bad. Like, it's going to get bad. So we was good last year. We're trying to get even better, you know? So every day, growth mindset, tightening down the details, iron sharpen iron, all that good stuff. We were good last year. We're going to get even better than last year.
So that certainly is the type of thing that you hear in fall camp that gets you hyped up, gets you all ready to go, gets you lathered. I wish I could remember some of the Jim Harbaugh things. Lathered, I think, was one of them that he would say about fall camp. But certainly, if Michigan's defense is exactly that, if it is able to get, I don't even want to say the most out of every player, because you've got a lot of experience. We underscored that a little bit with the snap counts yesterday. We're going to get deeper into the snap counts. I'm going to give you a snap count for every player that you kind of expect to be a big part of the defense. And that'll tell you that experience matters. But experience absolutely matters. And if the guys who have already had experience within the defense play that way, and even maybe some of them have a little bit more of a snap count this year compared to last year, if you have that, and then on top of it, you get better performances from some, which usually happens. It does happen that players get worse. It's relatively rare. A player tends to either get better or they stagnate. So I think the other part that underscores this is the Wink Martindale of it all, because people look at what he has done in the NFL and says, well, he's really aggressive. And that might be true. I think just kind of coming away from the press conference today, my thought was, okay, you essentially have guys that know what their role is and can execute. And they've been able to have more put on their plate as a result. Some of that might come with some aggressive play calls, as long as it isn't Don Brown in 2017 or 2019 against Penn State, where you've got Josh Metellus on an island all alone with a streaking down the field KJ Hamler. As long as you don't have any full-on lapses from a defensive play calling standpoint, you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot. And considering the experience, considering everything that Michigan kind of has going for it on the defense, they've got playmakers. They've got the 4 that were out there against Alabama for the final play up front. They've got other guys that are expected to be really, really good. You've got 3 potential first-round draft picks. I would even say likely first-round draft picks in Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and Will Johnson. You have another that could climb up there in a hurry in Jayshon Barham. Others who you could potentially see going on day 2, like an Ernest Hausman, like Makari Page, and pick a safety, essentially, whatever safety you want. They're probably very, very well could be a day 2 pick. There are so many options from a personnel standpoint of guys who could really thrive. Yes, there are some unknowns. That second cornerback, it could be a myriad of players. It could be Jair Hill. It could be Ricky Johnson. It could be Amir Hall. But even outside of Hill, they've all got a ton of experience, and it's relatively good experience. So that should be hopeful in and of itself. I just think that this defense, people are somehow sleeping on it. And I understand that you look some places and they say like, oh, it's going to be the 3rd best defense. It's going to be the 7th best defense. It's going to be a top 10 defense one way or another. Maybe just slightly outside the top 10. Listen, I think that might even be a little bit bearish, because what do we know that has typically gone very, very well in Ann Arbor, regardless of coordinator, regardless most of the time of head coach? I mean, if you try to go all the way back on the timeline, Bo Schembechler's defenses, Gary Moeller's, Lloyd Carr's, those were mostly great. Even Brady Hoke's were mostly great. There's only really 1 year in the Jim Harbaugh era where the defense wasn't good. Otherwise, it was at worst a top 11 defense. At worst, outside of 2020. So all of that tells you that this defense is a lot better, or is likely to be a lot better than a lot of people think, because they play defense in Ann Arbor the same way that other schools might play offense. And they've got all the pieces. They've got all of those chess pieces right there, raring to go. They know the board. They understand the board. They understand the game. They've got the coaches. They've got kind of a little bit of everything. So let's get into the snap counts, because I think that is really interesting that they have that. So we are going to do that here in just a moment. Before we do, and I'm just checking my email real quick, because there was something that I needed here, and it doesn't look like I got it. So we're gonna have to vamp jazz hands a little bit. Before we get into everything else, it's summertime. There's plenty of things that you're gonna want to get out and do. One of the things, especially on a beautiful 75-degree and sunny day like today, you're going to want to do is get out to the ballpark wherever you're at. Well, guess what? The best way you can do that is through Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I love the views from your seat, but let's talk about the all-in pricing, because what's one of the most frustrating things that you can do when it comes to buying tickets to your favorite concerts or sporting or comedy events? It's you sit there and you say, oh, it's this much per ticket. And then you check out and you're paying like double because of all the fees and all that stuff. You don't have that with Game Time. That's what makes it so amazing. So take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, there is one more thing that I want to talk to you about, and that is not only the exclusive apparel provider of the Locked On Podcast Network, but it is a personal fan favorite of me here at Locked On Wolverines. We've had the founder of this particular clothing brand here on the show. It's the good brand. It's Home Field Apparel. Like I said, they are the exclusive clothier of the when it comes to sports apparel here for the Locked On Wolverines show. You've seen me wearing my Home Field Apparel Slippery Rock hoodie on the show just a couple days ago. Once it got cold enough, I'm breaking out that hoodie. You've seen me wearing the national championship shirt. There's all kinds of great things to love about this exclusive and high-end sporting designer that has these amazing retro logos, and that's Home Field. So you're going to want to check them out, especially right now, because they've got the Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign coming out. There's all kinds of new stuff that is going to be dropping that as far as Michigan apparel is concerned. You're going to find new jackets, bomber jackets, and coaching jackets. Definitely some new shirts. But right now, it just launched this morning. They've got their new Michigan box that's got 3 never-before-seen designs, including a T-shirt, a hoodie, and a sweatshirt. It comes with a platinum card so you can access some of their sales early. It comes with a koozie, and it comes with socks. It's absolutely amazing. You're going to want to get your hands on it before it sells out, and it will sell out. So again, premium apparel brand Home Field, all things college. You can get your Michigan gear. If you like some other schools, like I love to get their subscriptions and just get a bunch of different schools sent to me. And I know a lot of you haven't liked it when I've worn some of those schools on this show, but they're also extremely comfortable. I wear more often than anyone would know, I wear their Michigan joggers because they're the most comfortable joggers I own. So go to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code GOBLUE24. That's homefieldapparel.com use the code, GOBLUE24 for 15% off of your next order. Trust me, you're going to want to do it. So this show went from feeling ultra organized to not so organized over a matter of like 3 minutes. I know it. I know it. There's no way for you to know it. I'm speaking out of this isn't always just a linear scenario. How organized am I today, though? We're not Googling things when it comes to snap counts. We are taking a look at them because I've went ahead and figured out exactly how many snaps every one of these likely contributing defensive players that they've had. Now, there's some names I didn't include, right? I didn't include Eno Etta. I didn't include Trey Pierce. I didn't include Cameron Brandt. But they're not, there's 20 guys here. I would venture to guess you're going to see all 20 of these guys. And then those names I just mentioned, maybe a surprise here or there, maybe Dom Nichols. We'll see. So I think one of the first things that is important to note is that 12 of the 20 players here have played, or maybe I have 19 here, have played starter quality minutes. So about 400 plus snaps, right? If you've missed a game or two, then you're kind of around the 400, 450-ish area when it comes to the amount of snaps that you would have. 3 have played solid reserve minutes, so somewhere between, I'd say 200 and 350. I think one of them's 352. 4 have played regular, somewhat decent minutes. See, that this is the things falling apart that I'm talking about, the inability to speak here. 4 have played relatively decent minutes. There we go. So somewhere between the 1 and 200-ish, and then 1 hasn't really played, and they still played about a game's worth of snaps. So you've got 12 in starter type minutes. You need 11 on the field. Now, granted, one of those players, Jair Hill, is the one who hasn't really played, and he is kind of penciled in as a starter. So in a way, though, outside of him, you've got about 10 starters because it doesn't really matter what position you're looking at. And certainly the ones who are likely going to be starters, they have those minutes. Now, Michigan obviously rotated a lot. And you can tell by some of the people's numbers. When I look at Jaden Mangum, Wes Walker, Amir Hall, and Ricky Johnson in particular, you're like, okay, they played more minutes than any Wolverine last year. And Michigan had 15 games. Some of those guys, Jaden Mangum didn't play in 15 games because Michigan State only played in 12. So that's interesting to note. So here's what we got. Derek Moore, 443 snaps. Mason Graham, 468 snaps. Kenneth Grant, 431. Rayshawn Benny, he's one that's in the decent, or I think in the reserve minutes, 251. Josiah Stewart, also reserve minutes guy, 352. So all out of those 5, you've got 3 starter minutes and 2 reserve minutes. TJ Guy, he was one of the decent minutes guys with 129 snaps. Jayshon Barham had 523 snaps. Ernest Hausman, this actually surprised me, 438 snaps last year compared to 503 at Nebraska as a starter at Nebraska as a freshman. Jaden Hood had 191, so he's in the decent minutes but not the reserve. Jimmy Rolder, he didn't really have a lot of snaps last year, redshirted due to injuries, but he had 317 in 2022. So that's a really nice number. Some good experience. Makari Page had 497 snaps. Jaden Mangum, 659. Wesley Walker, 675. Quinton Johnson, 501. Zeke Berry, 137. Remember, he got injured in week 2. He still played some snaps throughout the year, but it wasn't like he had played starter minutes, actually played as a starter, as a safety in week 1, and then got injured at the beginning of week 2. And then he kind of just had some special teams moments after that. Jaden McBurrows had 182 snaps. Will Johnson, 573. Ricky Johnson, 595. Jair Hill, 59. Amir Hall, 1,052. So that's Amir Hall had double the amount of snaps of a guy like Mason Graham, who started. Double the amount of snaps as a guy like Jayshon Barham, who started at Maryland. So that's a lot of experience. That's 2 seasons worth of experience, essentially. So when you look at that, it starts to kind of tell you a little bit of a story about the amount of experience, because there's only one potential starter here. Well, 2. Zeke Berry would likely be the starting nickel. Jair Hill, the starting corner. There's only 2 guys that you look at that are going to be on the field most often that you look at and say, they don't have a lot of experience. We'll see what they can do. Everyone else, the story's somewhat been written, so it's all on them to improve or essentially stay the same. Some guys could stay the same and you'll be plenty happy with it, right? Like if Mason Graham has the exact same season this upcoming year as he had last year, no one's going to be disappointed. But if he gets a little bit better because he worked a little bit harder at it, as Jim Harbaugh might have said, then watch out. You expect a guy like Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart, guys who were reserves but still had a ton of minutes, you would expect them to really go through the roof this upcoming season. So don't listen to anyone that says this is an experience, but you usually get better at football by playing football. And last year, most of these guys played a heck of a lot of football, like an insane amount of football. So I think that this defense really could be better. Surprisingly, there's a lot of times when people thought there's no way it can. I mean, 2016 to 2017, that 2016 defense was among Michigan's best, and 2017 was statistically better. It's possible. Although, like we talked about on Thursday, the offenses they'll face are a little bit tougher throughout the year compared to what they faced last year. Tail end of last year, some of the elite offenses, Ohio State, Maryland was actually a really good offensive team. And Alabama, Washington, and don't forget about the Big Ten championship game against the offensive juggernaut that is Iowa. And they held that offensive juggernaut to no points. Someone's going to come in and comment and be like, Iowa doesn't have a good offense. Okay. If you're watching and you don't get the sarcasm, then I don't know what to tell you. All right, we're going to move on, and I want to talk about fall camp because I was talking to my best friend on the way to the press conference earlier today, and I was like, I am starting to fall for the fall camp hype. Now, the fall camp hype has been accurate the last 3 years, so there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but I'm falling for it a little bit. So let's talk about it. Is it warranted? Is it not? And what is that? What do a lot of these narratives that Michigan likes to feed us, what do they actually mean? We'll get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, I love sports. I love them so much. And even with baseball season, there's something that you can get into, even when the sports aren't sportsing like you want them to. But FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up any kind of bet anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, something for everyone every single day. So head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we're going to fix the misspeaking from segment 2 and make it work for us in segment 3. As we round out the week here, I'm starting to feel the football. I don't know about you. Like, I went to Big Ten Media Days, and I was talking to a colleague that writes for covering Ohio State, and I talked to a colleague that writes covering, oh, I don't even remember who. They covered another team. Yeah, I talked to a couple of them around. I think it was a Michigan State guy, right? And we all had the same kind of feeling like it should not be football season yet. This is still very much summertime. Like normally we get into Big Ten Media Days and it's like, finally, here it is. Like been waiting forever for this. And that doesn't seem to be the case across the board. But now that we've had some time on task with press conferences, we had them all week. And I'm starting to feel it. Like I'm driving through Ann Arbor and I'm like, it still feels a little far off because like the week of the game or like maybe even 2 weeks before you start hearing the marching band practicing because, students have moved in. We're not to that point yet. We're still in early August. But a couple weeks, that's going to be the reality and it's going to feel like it. Today, it feels like kind of like a early fall day. It's 75 degrees out and everything. It just has that feel to it. So I'm ready for it. But because I'm ready for it, I feel like maybe to some degree, there's an emotional part of my brain that lets the Michigan propaganda take over to some degree. Now, in the past, it was always quite erroneous. It seemed they would start talking about players like they were very good players. Like Josh Ross, especially in his senior year, ended up being very good. And he was productive before his senior year. He had good years, 2018, and was a pretty good year. But the problem is that we were hearing things like Josh Ross is just like Devin Bush, but faster. He hits harder. All of those things. And you're like, wait, so you're saying that the guy who just left potentially is the best linebacker in school history, always just he's a heat-seeking missile and all of these things. You're saying that this guy that is on the same team is already faster and better? Okay, but we buy it, right? Like, it'll be like, oh, well, they're saying it. They've seen Devin Bush, and if they're seeing Josh Ross act like this, then there's a good chance. And then you come out in the season, and you're like, wait. And then he ends up being a really good player, but they set the expectations way too high sometimes. A guy like Donovan Jeter or Michael Dwumfor, like they were good. They were very good, but sometimes the way that they talk about them, it was like, think of whoever the best in Michigan history is and double it, and that's what you got in this guy. And sometimes I think that the fall camp expectations of the things that come out of Schembechler Hall end up being a disservice to some of those guys. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore because it just seems like, the things we've heard have been accurate the last couple of years. So when you're hearing things like we talked about yesterday, them opening up the playbook, the offense, doing this and that, I kind of believe it, but with some caveats, right? Opening up the playbook, what does that really mean? Does that mean, as some might suggest, like, welcome to basketball on grass, Michigan? No, it's not that. I saw some Buckeyes celebrating yesterday, being like, oh, by all means, get away from smash. No, they're still going to smash. That's not changing. Will they pass a little bit more in some games? Maybe. I mean, there were games where they passed an awful lot last year. But against the teams that were the bigger, badder teams, Ohio State, Penn State, Washington, they ran the ball for the most part. But I wouldn't be surprised to see just a little bit more aggression. At some point, you're probably going to need it a little bit from an offensive standpoint because you don't have a J.J. McCarthy, who had a really incredible year when it came down to third down completions. This is not something I looked up, so we're going to look that up now. If it's even a stat that's available on CFB Stats, which is the official statistician of Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire and host of Locked On Wolverines. I don't know that they have it for individuals. They don't, but I can look it up. I think I can look up third down conversions as by school. And Michigan was 40th, so it wasn't like super crazy good, but you felt really good generally about Michigan's ability to convert with J.J. McCarthy. With new quarterbacks and stuff like that, maybe it's not quite as good, but I think that you might see more aggression when it comes to passing the football in some situations. Maybe a 3rd and 4, maybe they have some ideas. We kind of saw that in the Rose Bowl, so it wouldn't surprise me if we saw it kind of beyond that. Anyhow, when it comes to individual players, we've heard it about a lot of guys. We heard it in the spring, and we saw it in the spring game. But I'm really excited about Eno Etta. I'm really excited about Zeke Berry. I'm excited about Cole Sullivan. He hasn't really been talked about this fall, but we saw a little bit in spring, and let's face it, the computer controlling Cole Sullivan in the EA Sports College Football 25 has been a game wrecker for me. So I'm going to let that inform my opinion. But for the most part, there aren't a lot of who's that out of nowhere player. Maybe we'll learn someone when we talk to Sharon Moore on Tuesday. But for the most part, it's guys who you've already expected to step up, stepping up, or guys that were talked about in spring that you saw with your own eyes in the spring game and said, oh, that guy did really step up. Those are the guys who are still supposedly doing really well in fall camp. So I'm buying a lot of the fall camp hype and suddenly feel like maybe we'll see a better team than a lot of people thought, certainly kind of meeting my expectations. I had Michigan as a 10-2 team this year. I know others think that they're going to fall off a cliff. I don't believe that's going to be the case. But we have seen teams that everyone said it's going to be really good. 2017, I'm looking at you. 2019 as well. Even 2020. And not end up being that good. I still just think that this isn't bluster. This is a team that knows what it's doing. And one of the important things, I think, is one of the things that Giovanni Helahati talked about. Why is the offensive line, are they being undervalued by the people outside of Ann Arbor? And he said, yeah, because you know what? We are strong together off the field because that's where it starts, and also on the field. We know each other. We love each other. We play for each other. That's way more important than people give it credit for. When you've got a bunch of individuals out there playing for themselves, yeah, sometimes it can work. That's why I've got my eyes on Ohio State. I think that they maybe have come more together as a team this offseason. We'll see. But if they start running the ball a lot, or do those wide receivers get upset? If they start passing the ball a lot, do those running backs get upset? There's a lot to be leery of if you're in that situation. So I think Michigan's in a really good spot. All right, we're going to carry on over the weekend, as in we're going to go ahead and not promise any weekend shows. There's breaking news, then maybe. Big M, maybe. Anyway, that'll do it for us today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.